If you have a student who needs to join your course remotely because they can't make it to campus for an in-person meeting, then you should take a closer look at the Zoom activity inside AsULearn. Zoom meetings created through the Zoom activity inside your course in AsULearn will be automatically configured to only be available to the students enrolled in your course. This means you don't have to separately set up the meeting on the Zoom website, then send the link out to all of your students. Instead, you can use the Zoom activity in AsULearn to manage everything in one place. As an added bonus, Zoom meetings created through the Zoom activity in your AsULearn courses will automatically populate in the timeline block on the dashboard, and it will automatically create corresponding events inside the calendar block. As a quick note before we begin, if you've never logged into Zoom using your AppState account, or if you can't remember logging into Zoom with your AppState account, do that first. You can log into Zoom with your AppState account by visiting appstate.zoom.us, then clicking the Login button. Logging into Zoom for the first time with your AppState account will finish the setup process for your Zoom account and ensure that you receive the proper license. But assuming you've already done that, you'll just enter your course and turn editing mode on. From here, find the place in your course where you'd like to add the Zoom activity. Then click either the plus icon or add an activity or resource to open the activity chooser. In the activity chooser, select Zoom Meeting. Like all activities and resources in AsULearn, you'll need to provide a title for this, and then configure any related settings for your meetings. The Schedule section of the settings is where you can control the dates and times of your meetings. We're assuming you're likely creating a recurring meeting for the rest of the semester, so next to recurring meeting, check the box that says this is a recurring meeting. If you want to skip a lot of setup in the schedule settings, you can set recurrence from daily to no fixed time. This creates essentially one generic meeting that is always available to your students, or you can set the recurrence to weekly and select the dates and times that your course meets. If you're using a recurring meeting and you have a recurrence set to something besides no fixed time, we strongly recommend including an end date, which can be a specific date or a specific number of occurrences. When you save your Zoom activity in your AsULearn course, this will create an individual session for every single day and time that we've specified, ending by the end date that we've set. As a reminder, once you bulk create these meetings through the Zoom activity in AsULearn, you can then log into Zoom with your AppState account and manage each individual meeting. For example, the university will be closed on Wednesday, November 27th and Friday, November 29th for the Thanksgiving holiday break. So from the Zoom interface, I can click the delete button, then delete this occurrence to delete that individual meeting. As a special note, you do not need to require registration, since this activity is only available to students enrolled in your course. There are 3 settings in the security section that we think you may want to take a closer look at. The first 2 are waiting room or join before host. These settings are mutually exclusive, so you can only use one or the other. If you select waiting room, then any student who joins your class session meeting will be put into a virtual waiting space. You will then have to manually allow them into the class session. Some instructors find this frustrating to manage, and instead opt to allow participants to join at any time, even if you haven't joined the meeting yet. Though the Zoom activity in AsULearn guarantees that only students enrolled in your course can access this meeting, you can certainly check the box for authentication to require authentication to join, which will require students to log into Zoom with their AppState accounts to join your class meeting. There are 2 settings in the media section that you may want to take a closer look at. The first is audio default, which I usually check because that mutes the participants as they join the meeting. I find this to be especially helpful since sometimes students don't realize they're unmuted. And since I sometimes forget to record the class meeting and I want to make sure that students can access that later, I'll set automatic recording to cloud. This does record the meeting and make it accessible through your Zoom account for 30 days. However, all Zoom recordings are automatically backed up to Kaltura. You can then use Kaltura to embed those recordings in your course. Finally, in the host section of the settings, we strongly recommend adding one or more alternative hosts. These are people who can join the meeting on your behalf, and they'll receive all of the host permissions that you have. An alternative host is a great person to have as a backup. To add an alternative host, simply enter their email address in this line. When you're done making changes to this activity settings, click Save and Display. This will take you to the same page that students see when they open the activity. There are 3 specific sections of this page that we find to be especially helpful. The first is in the Schedule section, which lists the date and time of the next meeting. One notable feature here is Add to Calendar. If you click this Download iCal button, it downloads a file to the user's computer. Opening that file then adds all scheduled sessions of these Zoom meetings to the user's calendar. In the Security session, you'll see the Join link for your meeting, allowing you to join early. And at the very bottom of the page is a link to all meetings that have been held up to this point.